Hello everyone, this is Tornado IP Consulting with Thoughtful Thursdays, where innovation meets strategy and IP. And I'm here today with two guests, Liz Herman and Katie Armstrong, and both of them have significant experience working with large companies in the quality space. And as we're exploring with various different people from different functions around how information is managed and how that impacts IP and IP strategy, I thought quality is a very, very appropriate space to explore. So I'm going to introduce my guests a little bit and then ask for them to speak for their current activities themselves. So Katie Armstrong is a chemicals and materials engineer with experience from chemical industry. She's the founder of Optimal Solutions, where she provides consulting services for operational challenges and helping companies remove roadblocks to growth and manage risk. Her specialties include supplier management, manufacturing efficiency, quality, and supply chain improvements. And Elizabeth Herman is also in the quality space. She's an engineering consultant with a background as quality engineer in industry, and she's also a mechanical engineer. So Katie, could you please tell us a little bit about what you're doing today and your consulting business?
Yeah, thanks Sylvia. Thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to chat. What we do at Armstrong Lynn is we help companies really remove barriers to growth and improve their operations. So if you have a process that's inefficient and you feel like you're firefighting every day, we can come in and kind of be that catalyst for change. A lot of times it's hard to get out from under the treadmill when your processes are inefficient. So it can be helpful to have someone from the outside coming in and focusing in on that. We also specialize in helping companies get ready for ISO 9001 certifications. And so we're, kind of on the quality side there. And Liz is a good complement to me. She has the much more difficult job of working more on the FDA side, med device side. So I'll kick it over to you and what you do.
Go ahead, Liz.
That's great. Thanks, Katie. So at Brookview Consulting, we specialize in helping small and medium-sized companies either establish certification to ISO 1345, update their quality system. We've also been a successful stopgap solution when companies are drowning in corrective actions. I know I talked previously with Katie about how sometimes a company unfortunately has to make a trade-off between continuing to progress their business and implementing corrective actions when it comes to issues that they've been having. I think the image that you had described of the treadmill is absolutely perfect. So within the scope of 1345, we've also helped companies identify root causes that are associated, or corrective actions that are associated with the true root causes, and helping prevent those recurring issues in the medical device field.
Thank you. So this is fantastic. It kind of reminds me a little bit, we spoke with a group of experts in the regulatory space as well. And if you think about your friends groups, people you hang out with socially, most people who don't live in chemical industry or, pharma industry, they have no idea that some of these functions even exist. So I think, I'm intending these conversations to be a little bit of an eye-opener, how important these functions are and what are the nuts and bolts a little bit. So in manufacturing organizations, critical information spans design, suppliers, quality systems, and regulatory documentation. From each of your perspective, where does the most valuable information actually sit today, and where is it most exposed or misunderstood? Katie, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So the question's more about kind of documentation and quality documentation.
I think so. It's about, the information that is critical for quality.
Yeah, so I guess maybe when a document is the most useful for quality purposes, it is because it's a process that solves a problem the company's having. I think a lot of times especially with ISO, companies can kind of get into this mode of, well, we just have to write a document to be ISO certified, right? And they don't think too much about, is this actually useful for our process? Does this help us in some way, or can we actually sit down and figure out do we need to update a process to make it make more sense? So I think the way it can be most useful is when you actually sit down and you're looking at documentation as, let's actually take a deep dive into this process and see what we can improve, what's working well, and capture what we actually do. Because obviously in an audit, if you're not doing what your documentation says, that's not a good thing, right? And so you don't want your documents to be an idealized version of what you do. You want it to be what you actually do, and you want them to be something that will actually be helpful for your business.
Liz, do you have any other thoughts on that?
It's going to seem like an echo of exactly what Katie had said, but a lot of companies, even when it comes to ISO 13485, there's a lot of, I'm just going to end up writing a quality system as opposed to folks sitting down and making sure that the quality system works for them. A lot of ISO standards or FTA regulations or regulations from other countries are very explicit about when they require you to do a certain thing a certain way versus you just need a procedure for it. And I think once a company has established their quality system, maintaining confidentiality of that quality system, I think might be the first step in terms of quality information that I would encourage companies to try to protect. Is those SOPs and those work instructions are critical in how your business functions, and making sure that they're protected in a way from bad actors, or even not even bad actors, just accidents. I've often seen folks establish a quality system, and instead of even publishing to a PDF or in an electronic quality system, they'll save them as a Word document, and someone will download them or someone will accidentally hit save. And so it's thinking more into the overall prompt of the information within the quality system and information that's important to protecting quality. It's a little bit of everything. And I think starting with SOPs and work instructions as the foundation would be a great place to start.
Thank you. And I would like to add to this, because I have seen both in the pharma space and the electronic space where the quality of the material is incredibly important for your customer. And the quality is what makes them come back to you. And you can charge them more money for it, and they don't care because they know that Tylenol that they're taking is the Tylenol, and it's not, like mixed in with lead food coloring or something like that. And so sometimes a lot of times that quality requires enormous efforts, enormous consistency in how that product is made. And again, documenting it, writing it down, and properly storing it and saving it is very important, and it is part of intellectual property of a company. I don't know if you want to add any thoughts to that, or we can move on to the next question. Do you have any thoughts on quality in terms of customer prioritization and customer importance?
I think that's huge in the medical device space. It's uncommon to have a medical device manufacturer that can do everything in-house, and so there's a lot of pulling in a consultant or consulting manufacturing. I apologize in advance for my dog. She's very talkative.
I love her.
And being able to protect the information that is being distributed, and also making sure that the access to the information is limited so that you're maintaining the confidentiality within those partnerships.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Definitely. Yeah. Katie, any thoughts on this? Any experience you've had touching this area of quality?
I was just going to add to that, especially in semiconductor too, same as med device, the quality is everything. And I think the one thing that people underestimate is that it's actually the quality of the actual product is like 20% of what quality actually means. And the other 80% is the systems that you have in place to handle issues. And I think a lot of people really underestimate that 80%. And they'll say, oh, but we deliver a good product every time. And the fact of the matter is that doesn't matter, because it only takes one issue for you to completely lose trust with your customer. And if you don't have that infrastructure in place to find the root cause, put into place a corrective action, making sure that corrective action is working, following up on it, which is a ton of work, and a lot of people, engineers, are needed for that. It's a lot of overhead. I think companies a lot of times will really underestimate the importance of the system and think that it's just about the quality of the product, when the reality is it's really about the quality of the system that you have in place.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The next question ties in a little bit. Many organizations are under pressure to move faster. New products, faster scale up, more automation these days. Where do you see companies unintentionally weakening quality or regulatory rigor in ways that create long-term risks?
Liz, you want to take this one first?
Sure. Yeah, I think that goes back to where through Brookview that we've added most value with companies. Because I often think of early in my career, I was interacting with a senior quality engineer that I think put it really well. And it's the common triangle. You can pick two. You can either have something done well or done fast or done cheaply. And a lot of companies, to your point, will try to move incredibly quickly. And I've seen this weaken the quality system in places where folks go, well, we just need this corrective action closed. Let's just figure out something that we think might work and implement it, and then rush the verification of effectiveness activity and making sure that what was implemented successfully addressed the root cause, and close out the report, and then it ends up happening again. And so it's important in my opinion, I think management teams to make sure that they are, if they want to move quickly, are still ensuring that the quality and the integrity of the systems that they had put in place, like Katie had been saying previously, that those are maintained and that those aren't jeopardized.
Yeah, just to add on to that too, I think it's really where I've seen that issue the most is when startups are starting to transition into a phase where they're really growing quickly and they have deadlines that they need to meet, but they're growing at a rate that turns them into a company that actually needs a quality system. And that's where I see this problem the most, because a lot of times, like, you start with a few founders, you have a great product, you're moving really fast, and you kind of have to early on. Like, you have to be able to move fast. That's the only way you're going to be successful as a startup. And a lot of times, if you're a successful startup, that will have worked for you for the past, 1 to 2 years, however long you were in the startup phase. But then I think a lot of founders kind of miss the boat when it comes to understanding when they need to actually hire on more experts and implement a system, because they get stuck in that mentality of, oh, well, this worked for us previously, so why would it not continue to work when we're doing it now? But it's also, when you work in a startup, you get used to the chaotic energy of always sprinting and like always needing to do the next thing and always changing things. And it can be really jarring, I think, for founders to think about doing something like a quality system where you have to put so much effort into evaluating any change, and slow down. And slow down is relative, I guess. Like, you could keep moving fast if you hired more people, to Liz's point, right? Like, it's either money or time, or you can do something fast if you have a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of founders kind of miss that boat with the transition of when it actually becomes critical to implement a quality system, be really damaging and can, I think, kind of cause people to crash and burn, and then they end up hiring people like me and Liz when everything's already on fire to come in and clean things up, and it's kind of like an emergency situation at that point. So I think that's what I've seen mostly.
So now I kind of want to shift back a little bit to larger companies. We hear a lot about quality systems, supplier system, ERP, PLM, but they rarely fully connect. When these systems don't align, what actually breaks first in the real world? Have you ever experienced that?
Yes, I definitely have. I think the biggest breaks that I've seen, honestly, is between the ERP system and the quality systems. I would say most places I've worked, the quality systems and the supplier quality systems, like supplier quality engineers they work together well because we kind of like exist in the same space, and we talk to each other. And like, I've seen usually that relationship is pretty good from what I've seen. But I think it's the connection of getting the flow of information from the quality experts that know what's going on, like who's a good supplier, who's a reliable supplier, who has a lot of issues, scars, and getting that information flowed to other departments like procurement or sales or even R&D. That's probably the biggest disconnect I've seen is between quality, manufacturing, supplier management, and R&D, because those are two groups that wouldn't necessarily speak to each other unless they had a reason to. But I think it can actually be really beneficial for those groups to talk to each other, because then you have a list of like, okay, these are our approved suppliers. These suppliers give us good material. They're responsive. They have good quality systems. Make sure you're ordering from them when you're doing your development of a new project, especially in industries like semiconductor and med device, where you get to a certain point with the development of a customer and then you're locked in. Like, you have to use something from a certain supplier that you came up with in development. So if you don't have the right information in development to get into the pipeline of good suppliers that operations people have spent so much time building up, that can definitely present some challenges too.
Liz, do you have any other
that's
thoughts?
a great point. I think where is, again, more specifically within ERP and the QMS, not connecting in a way that creates a lot of inefficiencies and ends up artificially inflating the headcount needs, where you might have a quality system and you have to publish all of your bill of materials, and you have to publish all of your work instructions, and you have to publish your non-conformance reports, and all of those decisions and those processes don't connect electronically to your ERP system. So when you put a job on the floor, you have to go into this separate system, print out this piece of paper, maybe upload it into the ERP system, and it creates you essentially have to do everything twice. And so trying to mitigate having to do things twice will also prevent artificially inflating your headcount. So you might not need as many document control people or quality engineers to maintain the non-conformance reports in your system, or manufacturing engineers that need to translate your process instructions to the BOM in your quality system, but then also the BOM in your ERP. So I think having lived that, and also recommend when folks are looking for ERPs and EQMS, either systems that can integrate or systems that can do both, which I know is incredibly rare, ends up mitigating the need for this inflated additional headcount.
So switching a little bit to the AI and digital tools. And I don't know if you're seeing this. I see it and I think about it in terms of intellectual property, because I think all the functions that are implementing AI have some confidential information and trade secret information that's incredibly important to maintain the value of a company or a business. And in your spaces, where do you see the real risk? And not the obvious one. In manufacturing regulatory environment, where's the less obvious risk for AI implementation?
I don't know, Katie, did you have a thought right off the bat?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a combined risk of, well, I have a few thoughts. I guess my first one maybe is that the fear is that people will become too reliant on it. Mm-hmm. And as we've seen, AI still has a lot of issues, I've seen even just in like generating documentation for 9001, like you run into a lot of issues with AI, and like some ERP systems will do that. They'll have kind of, and I don't know if they're using AI to generate it, but they'll have some sort of like templatized documents, right? And if you just use those, it's like usually not really going to work for you. And so I think it's interesting because feels like there's so many companies right now, so many software companies trying to make some sort of software, whether it's for a quality system or, for digital twin or some sort of data analysis. But I think my fear is that people will consider it a fully realized solution when it's really not. And you still need humans to go through and check things and make sure things are right, or like adjust the algorithms, adjust whatever inputs are, data inputs. That's a huge one in manufacturing right now that I feel like I talk about anytime someone gives me a microphone, I will talk about this. But like, it's the fact that manufacturing right now typically really doesn't have good data to input into an AI model. So let's say you buy a software that is going to optimize your processes in some way. A lot of manufacturers still operate on paper. Like, it's pretty rare to see someone that actually has a flow of process data that goes somewhere electronic, even if it's just an Excel file. And even in advanced industries, you see this. So I think my what I would say, I guess, to sum up is that, like, I think Industry 4.0 is still alive and well and still needs to be adopted by a lot of manufacturers before we start thinking about AI solutions and relying on AI solutions specifically.
Yeah, I think this is an eye-opener. I mean, tell this to people who are saying everybody's going to go out of business. It's just, there's a lot of work before that can happen. I mean, everybody's going to lose their jobs, right? Liz, what are you thinking? Anything to add to what Katie says?
I think the risk of reliance in every aspect is huge. Yeah, I think like Katie had been saying, trying to generate documentation based on a standard, I would say on average AI could get you 60% there, but there still is a lot of, it could probably come up with a outline, but the meat of how your process flows should be a decision that people end up making. The same with manufacturing processes or even design elements. Some folks that are not necessarily confident making a design decision or a labeling and packaging decision might use AI and be provided with the wrong information, which I've seen multiple times. I think the confidential information piece is, I think, the obvious risk with AI, and where I've seen it successfully executed once. There is one company that was able to identify an AI solution that did not crowdsource, and it was a tool that was specifically, I'm going to upload these 10 ISO and FDA related documents, and then I will ask it a question based on the information I've already taught it. There's still a human feedback loop, there's still a review at the very end, but it's essentially used as give me a summary of these things, as opposed to give me all of the answers in the universe and come up with something that may or may not be correct that I have to fact check and do a lot of work with later. I think specifically when it comes to a place to start for documentation specifically, that AI might have a place. But like Katie is saying, until manufacturing identifies a process tool, I think AI would end up muddying the waters too much. Yeah, I think we're years away from it being a decent solution.
Interesting, and I'm hearing the same thing in other functions that I had conversations with recently. And so, again, just staying with the mid to large size companies today, if you were advising a VP, what should they fix first in your space to better protect critical information and reduce risk? And maybe we should stay, I mean, you can answer this however you like, but it'd be really nice to also add the AI element, because I do think VPs are being pushed to deploy AI. And so if you think about that, how would you advise them, Katie? What are you thinking?
So I think the biggest thing for me is I think sometimes leadership can try to implement an AI solution that doesn't solve the core of the problem. And so I think it's if I was advising a VP, I would really encourage them to speak with their employees, especially people that handle these day-to-day processes like operators, engineers, people at that level, and ask them what the pain point is for them, because I think a lot of times, again, people that aren't necessarily in touch with the day-to-day operations might kind of overestimate what the need for AI is, where they might be saying like, oh, we need to use it for optimizing a process or for figuring out a root cause for a solution that is like probably going to end up being wrong, right? But I think the reality is that people are still doing so many mundane tasks. Like every time I get a new process data point, I have to upload it, take it, download it from SAP and then copy paste it into Excel, where it like has this data table that I have to then drag and include the data point, like so many steps that are happening manually that it's like, well, that is actually a good solution for AI, right? Like taking data and being able to automatically generate a process control dashboard, right? Even just data manipulation, something that simple isn't being used. Like AI isn't, I don't really think being used well for that right now, but that's something that actually would free up a lot of time in someone's day and allow them to do that more difficult work that comes with, finding the solution for a root cause and following up on it and making sure that it actually worked. And so I think you can get a lot more value out of your employees if you're asking them, like, what is actually the struggle? Like maybe it's something like searching. Like I know there's kind of like Liz was saying, you have your ERP system and then you have your QMS. And then you maybe have like another system that you use in your lab, right? And there's usually a lot of different softwares, a lot of different systems happening, and it's hard to get them to talk to each other. So that's another opportunity for a good AI solution, right? Is like, okay, how do I just search all of these places at once and then just give me all the info I need right in this one spot? And then that's going to free up some time in my day too, right? So I think it's important for leadership to really, truly understand what are people's pain points, like what are the true bottlenecks that don't need to be bottlenecks in this day and age. And I think then you'll see probably a lot more success with an AI solution like that.
Is anything to add?
I mean, once again, I completely agree. I think that's where I think somebody in consulting like Katie or myself ends up adding quite a bit of value. I've seen this successfully happen when like a consultant's able to come in and talk to the VPs and go, okay, well, what are your corporate goals? And then independently go talk with the folks on the floor and go, okay, well, we have a goal of getting the scrap rate down from 8 to 5%. What is happening right now on the floor? What are some processes? How can we end up improving this? Looking at some AI solutions to try to make the implementation of the data analysis quicker, but actually implementing what the folks end up coming up with. And giving that a try first. And so, yeah, just echoing everything that Katie had said about ensuring that the folks who are executing the processes and the changes will be happening too are involved in that change and have a voice in what the solutions are.
Yeah, it's interesting that you guys are saying this, because my series of conversations actually started with somebody who's a consultant, and she deploys AI in various different types of companies. And she posts a lot. Her name is Rujita Singh, and she posts a lot, and she's always complaining about how she comes into a company and she says there's no rhyme or reason around where they should deploy, and there's no strategy and no prioritization. So what do you want to do first? What do you want to do next? And I think that kind of prioritization can't come from anything other than like boots on ground. Like, where are we actually having those issues where we're wasting time? And you have to prioritize all those things too, because it still takes effort. You're gonna still have to check if like that Excel spreadsheet got properly uploaded and moved here and there. So prioritize all of those efforts. Which one would save the most amount of time and be helpful? So I have a few lightning round questions, which the goal is just see what you think with just one phrase or sentence to answer. And even if it's a repetition of what we already discussed. So the first one is, what's the most underestimated risk in manufacturing today, Katie?
Man, okay. Most underestimated risk. Honestly, I think it's turnover. Yep. I think it's turnover, because you lose so much knowledge when you lose someone, especially if they've been there for many years. And, as we know, it's a big issue right now. Manufacturers aren't really prioritizing career growth, career development for their operators. So I think that's damaging, and it's something that flies under the radar.
What about you, Liz?
That's a really good one. I think the biggest risk in manufacturing is like lack of robust processes and There are I'm based in New England, but not specifically Boston. And so we are competing with a lot of like aerospace. A lot of the companies are competing with aerospace industries to try to get talent. And so there will be folks who have a lot of engineering experience, but don't necessarily have medical device manufacturing experience. We'll write a really great instruction if an engineer is building what we're manufacturing on the production floor, as opposed to taking that knowledge and the engineering understanding and translating it into something that, because of high turnover, we can have someone come in and fill these shoes rather quickly and give them the tools they need to succeed. And so I think our operation sheets, process instructions are often overlooked for opportunities for update and to making sure that the clarity is robust.
So I guess both of you are touching at talent, attracting and retaining talent, and transitioning knowledge. And we had a conversation about this last week in context of, and yeah, that it is definitely a concern that's overlooked sometimes. Second question is, quality system or supplier relationship? What breaks faster under pressure, Katie?
That's a good one. I would say supplier relationship, I think, breaks faster. Especially, ideally, if you have a quality system, it's pretty robust, and like quality systems inherently are meant to handle breakages. Like they're meant to handle issues. That's what they're designed for. Whereas supplier relationships, sometimes if the right amount of care is not put into it or the right amount of effort is not put into it, that can break the instant you have some sort of big issue. With environmental issues especially have caused a lot of that recently. The freeze over in Texas, as was like pretty devastating for the semiconductor industry. But yeah, that's another one. People underestimate the level of effort that you need to really have a robust supplier relationship. So I would say probably that one.
Man, this is a really good question. My gut quality system, but within the context of it being maintained. I've been doing a lot of looking into FDA warning letters recently, and it's when medium-sized companies, it's the growing period that Katie was talking about, whether it's small to medium or medium to large. You'll get folks in positions that like, oh, well, we've gotten all this data from the field, but it's too expensive to do something about it, or we're trying to justify a way that the risk isn't what the FDA says that the risk is. There's like taking shortcuts. So I think maybe because I have the FDA warning letters on my brain, I think when companies start to rush, maintaining the quality system itself ends up falling by the wayside.
Next question is, one document that matters more than people think in your space, Katie?
One document that matters more than people think. Probably say again, process control documents, kind of to what Liz was talking about earlier. I think people do underestimate how important it is to have a process document or batch record or whatever it is that people follow that's accurate, and specifically that has enough information. Because you see this time and time again in manufacturing, someone that hasn't done it before will come in and follow the batch record exactly, and you will not get the desired result at all. And that usually comes from a lot of generational knowledge from operators that they just pick up over time that doesn't necessarily get written down. And that's something that's really challenging to stay on top of, is writing down all the little tweaks and things that operators do on a day-to-day basis. So having a robust process document, I would say, is probably the most important.
Liz, anything? You agree?
I agree with what Katie was saying. And I would also add the quality manual. I think when talking with folks, the quality manual oftentimes gets perceived like a document that you're just required to have. And then it's a regurgitation of a standard, and I've even seen some folks set it up where they actually do just copy and paste clauses from the standard, like this is a clause we're following, this is a clause we're not following. But it really is the foundation of how you're intending on establishing your quality system. And folks being familiar with it has been something that I've seen companies get audit findings for. Their notified body will walk around and we'll ask them about their quality policy. We'll ask them if they understand the scope of their job. We'll ask them if they're familiar with the quality manual and get unsatisfactory answers. And so I think it's something that once it's established is often ignored, but should be reviewed, and people should be aware of it.
So moving back a little bit to AI, in manufacturing, in your opinion, is it overhyped or underprepared?
Can I say both? Yeah, I do think it's overhyped, underprepared. Again, I think really what AI struggles with right now is it's not solving a problem that exists yet. I think it's solving a problem that's much more advanced than where manufacturers actually are. So I think a successful AI company would meet people where they are and create custom solutions that will actually help them. Because a lot of times your company would have to go through a whole data transformation in how your data is collected to even think about using AI. So I think it's a little overhyped in the sense that many AI companies are not something that you can just slap on the line. Granted, I have seen one or two that are like that, where it's something that, it's a camera or something like that you can just put on your line and it collects data that way. And those are the ones that have been successful, are the ones that make the actual collection of the data easy to add on to your existing process. But I think a lot of companies struggle with that. They're not solving the actual problem, or they're creating more work for people, or you'll run into a company that relies on it too much and lays off a bunch of employees and then starts having a bunch of issues. So I think that's kind of things to keep an eye out for, I guess, with AI.
Yep. Does anything to add?
No, the same. It is overhyped and underprepared.
And final question is, one thing companies think is protected, but actually isn't.
The one thing companies think is protected, but actually isn't. I think I might go with supply chain on this one, just because I know a lot of people think that their supply chain is fine. And I know there's obviously a lot of attention right now on supply chain integrity and disruptions and how to handle disruptions, but a lot of companies really just don't put a ton of effort into that. I mean, with some companies it makes sense. Like if you're a machine company and you're getting metal raw material and you have a couple places you can get it from, then that's fine, right? But a lot of companies that have really specialized processes or are single sourced just sort of accept their situation, just kind of accept that they're single sourced, when in reality there's a lot that you can do to mitigate that risk. And again, it takes a lot of overhead work, and that's kind of the problem. And leadership doesn't necessarily want to invest a lot of time and money into something that hasn't generated a problem yet. But with supply chain, if it does become a problem, it can become a multi-million-dollar problem, and it can really, really backfire if you're not ready for that. So I think that's one that people are kind of unprepared for.
Liz, any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think going back to one of Katie's earlier points, I think folks think that their workforce is protected when it's not. They're seeing a lot of folks will count on the number of resources on their team, or will count on so-and-so's been here for a while and they seem to be happy, and not anticipate that a little bit of turnover is normal, but also ensure that like you're prioritizing your high performers, you're holding folks accountable to ensure that problems don't become incredibly costly, and that everyone's being provided the feedback that they need in order to make sure that your quality systems are maintained, your product is as free of defects as possible, that folks are given the tools that they need to be successful. So more often than not, it seems, I'm sure Katie, you've seen this too, where in the supply chain where we're like, oh my goodness, all of a sudden the supplier's mad at me, or like all of a sudden this employee left. It's usually not all of the sudden. So like the assumption that these systems and people are always going to be there is something I see companies often take for granted.
It's kind of like that, like the divorce came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But it's like
the supplier's
so mad. A million
okay.
little things happened. Yeah, like it's the same concept.
And I kind of want to link all this final thoughts back to information and knowledge, because it kind of links it back to Tornado IP, intellectual property. When I say to somebody, Tornado IP, everybody thinks patents, and I'm like, intellectual property is actually everywhere, because information is everywhere. And risk in managing information is cross-functional, and not a single function owns it. So protecting innovation today, it's not just legal, it's not quality, it's not regulatory. It's really a coordinated business awareness and business strategy. Like business needs to be aware, and the resources to protect it. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Liz. This has been a really enlightening conversation, and looking forward to talking to you again sometime. I'm going to hit stop.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia.